In this video, we'll be discussing how to use the crop tool. Now, if you notice over here on the side in your tools panel, the crop tool is right here. I'm going to click on it, and as soon as I do, this little framework appears. Now, all I have to do is just click and drag on any of these points. So I can click from a corner and pull it in, or if I wanted to just do the side or the bottom, I have those points as well that I can click and drag. Now, at this point, if I like the crop, all I have to do is press enter, or I can click on this little check mark up here. Now, one of the things that Photoshop has tried to add in as it's progressed is the ability to go back and change things indefinitely. And for the crop tool, the way that you can do this is that you can actually go back to the information that you had. It saves all of the information that was there. Now, if you don't like that and you want to make sure that you actually get rid of that, you want that information gone, all you have to do is press this button, delete cropped pixels. And if you do that, it'll actually get rid of all of these for good. Now, I don't like that. That is called destructive behavior. And I want to act in a non-destructive way. And so a non-destructive way means that I just click on that, keep this unclicked, and then I just press enter and I can keep all of my information. There's one other handy little thing, this little content aware. Content aware is a pretty fun little tool. Now, let's say I decide I actually want a little bit extra sky. I'm going to click on this content aware and pull it up so the crop actually goes beyond. So it's actually adding new information here. Now, when I press OK, what it's going to do is actually takes that information, all this blue sky here, and it figures out a pretty intelligent way to put in something in that space. After it's progressed, well, there you go. It added in some sky. Now, this works good on things like sky. Not always as good where you have a lot of information. So if I tried this on the ground, we can see what it'll do, but it probably wouldn't look as good. Or if I pulled it from the side here, well, we can give it a shot. But Photoshop, when it's more complex, it can be a little harder for it to figure out. But it did a decent job. You can see it kind of repeated the stuff over here. So it does have a pretty clear digital look to it. This bush and this bush are obviously the same. And so it's not as good of a job. Now, if you just need to add in some clouds and sky, this is a really pretty intelligent feature. So it's kind of nice to know about that. Let's talk about some of the other things that this crop tool can do. Let's start over here. So we have, first of all, the main way that it works is by a ratio. The ratio just means that if I click on it and I select certain parts of it, it's just thinking about this in terms of this ratio. Well, I can constrain that. So let's say I know that I want this to be a 4:5 ratio. Well, now I can constrain the proportion so it always stays within that 4:5, or I can reverse it. And this little button will reverse that. So now I have 5:4, a little bit more of a landscape in a common photo look. Notice if I actually grab within this, it actually grabs the image behind it. So I move the image within the framework of the crop tool. So I'm going to decide I want this about here. Now I actually don't want this to be at a 5:4, and I have some preset options here that I can use if I wanted to do that. Another really handy one to know about is the width by height by resolution. So let's say I want this to be exactly 5:4 inches, and that's going to constrain it to inches, and I can make it 300 pixels per square inch. Now what that'll do is actually make sure that I have it at 300 pixels per square inch. So whatever size I put this at, as soon as I press return, it's going to change all of the information to make sure that it matches this 5" by 4" by 300 pixels per square inch. And the good or bad of that is that it may actually end up creating more information or interpolating information. So be careful where there may be cases where you don't want to overdo that. Okay? But it is definitely good to know that that is an option. So you can crop your image to exact inches and pixels per square inch. Okay. Now, one other really handy little tool I'd like to talk about is this straighten. Now, let's say I've I took an image and the horizon, maybe it's a little bit wonky, and I want to make sure that the horizon is exact. So if I take this and follow along the horizon, let's say this is my horizon right here, you can see that it actually rotates it to match that horizon. If I try it again, if I want to keep trying until I get that horizon just right, the longer you pull this out, the further out you drag it, the more accurate, the more true that horizon is actually going to be. So you can see again, this is moving it around to match the rotation to make sure that that fits within that space. You can actually change the rotation too, right? So if you notice the cursor, when I pull out away from the corners, it actually turns into this arced kind of shape. If I click and drag, I can actually move the photo within that frame, right? And change the rotation to whatever I want it to be. So if I want the rotation to be kind of off and wonky, I have that option as well. Okay, that's a really handy feature. Let's look at this feature in here. I find this kind of nice too. This is basically just a way of viewing what you have in here. So currently the rule that is set up is the rule of thirds. So it's actually showing you where the third marks are, right? And we will talk about how that is important compositionally more later on this course. A grid shows you more of a complete grid. Diagonal, triangle, golden ratio is nice. You can put a golden spiral in there. And you can see where things align along these traditional kind of compositional motifs. So that can be a useful tool to have. And then finally you have a couple of options that you can play with in here. If you don't want to see the cropped area, or if you want to use a classic mode, if you're used to the classic Photoshop, you can change it back through this. And that is how you use the crop tool.